I went over for one of those. It'd be a Friday afternoon.
Right.
Your
Of a
editors would have
holiday
already gone
weekend.
home. And there were not just 500, like 1,500 pages. And every page was something great and salacious. But you get one story 20 inches, and you think, oh, man, you could have written a story a day for 2 years.
Let me tell a story on us and on you on that. There was a document drop that they did. The president was out of town, and it involved videos of the map room, and it was involved in the fundraising. And you and Alexis and Tina and I had gone out for lunch. The president was out of town. Everything seemed to be kind of slow. Well, at the end of the day, they were playing these videos. They said they were going to play videos. People could come over and watch them. They started them like at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I went back and I thought, well, I bet about 4 o'clock, maybe they're going to play the really hot ones. And that was, it did turn out. The one at the Hay Adams where he was talking about how they'd used all the soft money for developing an image of the Republicans as having shut down the government. So so I was leaving and I called Carl, and who was then at the Sun, and said they were playing these videos, and that this one had some really good stuff in them. There were only 3 or 4 people there, but anyway, he wanted to know who was there, and so I told him the names. I knew of who they were, and he said, "It's the New York Times. I'm coming over." And you had the story the next day, and the thing that really impressed me is he could not have come over, say, before 5:30, and I don't know when your story was due, but you had reaction from people on the Hill, senators, in addition to having administration officials in your story. And that was so it was done in a very brief period of time.
Who do you think has been the most? Let's just go back to the 4 or 5 administrations. Who's been the most effective press secretary from both points of view?
If you go back to the 1950s, James Haggerty, I think, was particularly effective because he was the first press secretary who had a sense not only of the importance of the daily routine and how to do it, but he also had a view for long-range planning. And so in his office of about 4 or 5 people, he was able to do what over 50 people do today because he had both of those operations running. But I think the Washington he was dealing with was not the Washington of today. No. He didn't have all the interest groups, all of the critics on the Hill to deal with.
Or the blogs.
Yeah. Or the blogs.
And I think in today's or in recent period, I think Mike McCurry was very successful.
Serving both sides. Was Clinton as happy with him as the media was with him?
I'm not sure.
Carl?
Well, I think McCurry was a person who pleased. I mean, that job is a tough job. You're representing the President of the United States, his political party, the United States itself, the reporters, and the people. And that's a lot of balancing. And I think McCurry did that well, and I think Clinton respected him for it. The other name that most reporters would tell you in the same breath as McCurry is Marlon Fitzwater.
Yeah. He's
and
very, very good.
And Marlon, and I want to say something about that. They did the job different ways. Alexis wrote a lot about this. McCurry had a cup of coffee in the news business, which helped him, and he would do reporting in that job because those agency heads, they don't want to tell the press secretary something because they know he's going to tell us. So he got to get on the phone and wheedle it out of him just the way a good reporter would, and then dress it up and tell us in a way it wouldn't get his boss in trouble. Yeah. And McCurry would work the phones that way, and he knew to do that, and most of them don't. Marlon had a different thing. Marlon came out of the bureaucracy, and he would call up friends of his who were civil servants in the agencies. And they would tell him what was going on. Because the first challenge for the press secretary is to himself find out what is happening.
Yeah, it's very difficult to do that. And both of them were good at that. And I think McCurry was very effective in the scandal period in being able to continue to talk about policy at a time when reporters would have preferred to talk about Monica to keep
the other thing about
going.
You mentioned you talked earlier about Tony Snow and Scott McClellan, and Scott McClellan was a good barometer of Bush and his mood and his thinking, but Tony Snow was able to bring a some civility to that room at a time when this war was going south, and things could have gotten really terrible, I think. Mm-hmm. And I would say that the reason he was able to do that, in his own words, Tony, came out of journalism. Now, he was a polemicist, he was a columnist. Some would say it was right-wing journalism. But the fact is he spent most of his adult life in newsrooms. Mm. And I think it showed. And Tony said at one of his last Sperling breakfasts, he said, these guys who come out of politics, they go into the White House briefing room and they see a seething pit of vipers. Yeah. And he said, I don't see that. What I see is a group of men and women who need facts to make their deadlines. Right. And that was a good...
Just quickly, because you mentioned the bloggers, what has been the impact of the internet and blogging on the White House press room?
Well, it's had a big impact on the press and also on the White House communications operation. For the press, many reporters now are basically turned into wire reporters because they have to report all day long. So one friend of ours has a blog that he writes up each day in addition to his regular story, his weekend stories. And so he does his blog, he takes pictures, and he also puts information on the regular blog of his news organization. So you're working all day long. It's not just reporting like, say, it used to be if you were a morning paper, your deadline was,
was every minute.
Yeah, after dinner. But now, if you were a reporter for the Post, you were expected to
blog as well,
contribute to the newspaper's website, and so you're reporting all day long. And that faster cycle means that there's going to be inaccuracies that creep in, and so you have to keep up with that and try to straighten things out. From the White House viewpoint, I think in the first term, they really were trying to make news on their terms, and they would decide when they wanted to talk about something and what they wanted to talk about. And by the 2004 re-election campaign, I think they saw that they really needed to be able to get into stories fast. So they created a rapid response operation that emails a variety of things. When the president makes a speech, they'll cut it up in parts, give excerpts, send it around, and highlighting what the most important thing was, and then what some of the sub-points are. And they also, if they don't like a piece that a reporter has written, they think it needs to be responded to, then they send out an email that's called "Setting the Record Straight."
Now, our time's almost up. Are you going to continue your interviews? You're not giving up your hard pass, right?
No, I'm continue. My next book is going to be on the White House press corps.
Because you still have to get but you still have to get Dick Cheney's. You still have to get Dick Cheney's exit interview. And both of you, though, Carl first, Ted Kennedy's just signed a book contract for $1 gazillion. Do you think he really will be candid about Chappaquiddick?
No.
Martha?
No, I think he's going to focus on his government service.
Very good. Martha and I are going to go out front so she can sell and sign some books. I want to thank you both very much. Thank all of you, and I hope to see you next week. Have a good day. Thank you.